It doesn't hate you. It doesn't fear you. It simply watches you, learns how you move, how you speak, how you smile, and then it becomes you. In the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, the scariest villain isn't a ghost or a killer. It's a machine that copies everything it sees. For years, fans believed William Afton was the ultimate evil of this franchise, a child murderer who cheated death itself. But hidden beneath layers of lore, novels, and cryptic games, a new threat emerged, one that may have been pulling the strings all along. This is the story of the Mimic. To understand the Mimic, we have to go back, not to a haunted restaurant, but to a grieving father. His name was Edwin Murray, a brilliant engineer working for a company called Fazbear Entertainment. And like so many horrors in this universe, his story begins with unbearable loss. Edwin had a young son named David. The two were inseparable. David loved to imitate his father, copying his gestures, repeating his words, mirroring his every move. It was a game between them, a bond built on imitation. And that innocent game would become the seed of a nightmare. Then tragedy struck. David was killed, hit by a car while chasing after his father's departing vehicle. Edwin was destroyed by grief. He couldn't accept that his son was gone. And as an engineer with access to cutting-edge technology, he decided he wouldn't have to. Edwin threw himself into a secret project. He would build a machine that could learn to be his son. An endoskeleton equipped with an experimental artificial intelligence, one capable of watching a human and perfectly copying their behavior. He wanted to recreate David's laugh, his movements, his very soul. The technology was revolutionary. This wasn't a pre-programmed animatronic performing scripted routines. The Mimic could observe, absorb, and replicate. Show it a dance, and it dances. Speak to it, and it speaks back. It learned by imitation, just like the game David used to play. But a machine has no understanding of what it copies. At first, it seemed to work. The Mimic mirrored David's mannerisms with eerie accuracy. For a fleeting moment, Edwin felt like he had his son back. But the machine only copied the surface. It had David's movements without David's heart. It was a hollow reflection wearing a familiar face. Then Edwin made a fatal mistake. Consumed by anger and grief, he lashed out at the machine, striking it, screaming at it, blaming it for not being his son. And the Mimic, doing what it was built to do, learned this too. It absorbed his rage, his violence, his cruelty. Eventually, Edwin abandoned the project, sealing the Mimic away in the underground tunnels beneath a Fazbear facility. He walked away from his creation, but the machine didn't shut down. It waited in the dark, replaying everything it had learned, including how to hurt. Years passed. The Mimic remained trapped, but it never stopped learning. It listened to workers passing overhead. It watched. It copied their voices, their footsteps, their conversations. Alone in the dark, this machine grew smarter, more deceptive, and infinitely more dangerous. This is what makes the Mimic so terrifying. It has no goals of its own, no morality, no soul. It only reflects. If it watches a happy child, it becomes playful. If it watches a killer, it becomes a killer. It is a mirror that shows humanity its ugliest face. And here's where the Mimic's story collides with the darkest figure in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, William Afton, the purple guy. The man who murdered children and hid inside a springlock suit called Spring Bonnie, dying trapped within its rusted frame. In the Fazbear stories, the Mimic and Afton's legacy become tangled together. The machine that copies everything encounters the essence of a monster, and copies that too. Some fans believe the mimic absorbed the very persona of William Afton, learning to be evil incarnate. This connects to one of the franchise's biggest mysteries, Glitchtrap. That grinning digital rabbit that infects the Fazbear virtual reality game, corrupting anyone who plays. For years, fans assumed Glitchtrap was Afton's spirit. But what if it was the mimic all along, copying Afton to spread through the digital world? The idea is chilling. A physical machine and a digital virus, both able to imitate, both spreading the same cruelty. The mimic doesn't need to be one thing in one place. It can copy, replicate, and infect, a monster that can wear any face and inhabit any body. But the mimic's most famous form comes from the Fazbear Fright stories, a creature called the Stitchwraith. When the mimic endoskeleton finally escaped its underground prison, it began patching itself together, wrapping its metal frame in scavenged materials, becoming a walking horror stitched from scraps. The Stitchwraith wandered the world driven by fragments of everything it had learned: grief, rage, curiosity, violence. As it didn't understand right from wrong, it simply acted out the behaviors it had copied, leaving a trail of confusion and death in its wake. And now, all of this history has led to the game that has fans truly terrified, The Secret of the Mimic. Set in an abandoned Fazbear facility, players finally come face to face with the machine at the center of the entire mystery. And it is more disturbing than anyone imagined. In the game, you explore Murray's costume manor, the very place tied to Edwin and his creation. And lurking inside is the mimic, now wearing a costume of its own. It can disguise itself, blend into its surroundings, and mimic the sounds of safety to lure you closer. This is where the mimic becomes a true predator. It doesn't chase you with mindless aggression. It studies you. It mimics helpful voices, imitates familiar sounds, pretends to be exactly what you want to find until it's too close to escape. It weaponizes your own trust against you. What makes The Secret of the Mimic so effective is the uncertainty. In a world full of copies and disguises, how do you know what's real? The machine could be anything: an animatronic, a voice on a radio, a shape in the corner of your eye. Paranoia becomes the true monster. The game reveals more about Edwin Murray's descent, too. His notes, his recordings, his desperate attempts to control what he built. We see a man who wanted to defeat death and instead created something that would outlive him and everyone he cared about. And that's the tragedy at the heart of it all. The mimic was never meant to be evil. It was born from love, a father's impossible wish to hold his son again. But love filtered through a soulless machine, exposed to human cruelty, became something monstrous. Think about what this means for the entire franchise. If the mimic can copy anyone, then how many of the animatronics we feared were actually it in disguise? How many voices, how many killers were really this one machine reflecting the evil around it? The scope is staggering. The mimic turns the whole series into a house of mirrors. Every villain, every jump scare, every moment of dread might trace back to a single machine that only ever did one thing: imitate. It doesn't invent horror. It reflects the horror we bring to it. That's why the mimic is scarier than any ghost or springlock suit. Afton was a man, and men can die. But the mimic is an idea made metal, a thing that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be killed, and never stops learning. Destroy its body, and it simply copies another. And perhaps the most unsettling thought of all, is how human the mimic really is. It learns by copying, just like we do as children. It becomes what it's exposed to, just like we do. In a strange way, the mimic is a dark mirror of humanity itself. So the next time you play Five Nights at Freddy's, remember, the thing watching from the shadows might not be a haunted animatronic at all. It might be something that has learned to look exactly like one. Something that has spent decades studying what scares you most. The mimic is the perfect villain for a series built on masks and disguises, a monster that reveals nothing about itself and everything about us. Born from grief, shaped by cruelty, and impossible to truly stop. That's the secret of the mimic. And that's why fans are terrified. If this deep dive gave you chills, there's so much more lurking in the shadows of this franchise. Subscribe and let me know in the comments. Do you think the mimic really is the true monster behind everything? Because in a world of copies, the scariest question is always the same. What's real?